Hi, I'm Lori, and welcome back to The Spoon-Fed Soul. Well, if you are like most people, you have probably wondered if there is any way to determine whether or not the Bible really can be trusted. So in today's video, we're going to be taking a 5-question quiz on the biblical manuscript evidence in a heads-up comparison against other antique documents. And later on, I'll share with you how you can get your hands on a download for reviewing the material for yourself so that you can see for yourself that the Bible really can be trusted. Quiz question number 1. Do we have any real evidence for the Bible? Yes, we have archaeological evidence, we have physical evidence in the form of manuscripts, and further, those manuscripts give us additional evidence in the form of internal and external evidence. Quiz question number 2. True or false? The transmission of the biblical text happened like a game of telephone, so they can't really be dependable. False. The game of telephone relies on person-to-person, secretive communication, so that the message at the end is often very different from the message at the beginning. Biblical documents were typically written recordings of public pronouncements of apostles and prophets, and then those documents were circulated among other churches and synagogues for further copying. Quiz question number 3. How does New Testament manuscript evidence compare to the manuscript evidence of secular antique documents? Homer's Iliad is the best attested secular document of antiquity. The world has in its possession about 1,900 copies of that work. By contrast, we have about 5,800 Greek New Testament manuscripts. We have an additional 18,000 copies of the early translations of Greek New Testaments into non-Greek languages. And scholars think we have about 1 million quotes of the New Testament in the works of the early church fathers. Some scholars suggest that the New Testament could be recreated just in those 1 million quotes from the church fathers alone. And in the description box below, I will link you to a transcript of an interview in which New Testament scholar Dr. Dan Wallace discusses that the average Greco-Roman author could compile a height of his manuscripts at about 4 feet of his collected works, but the New Testament pile of manuscripts would reach about 1 mile high. And that's just the New Testament evidence. We also have approximately 42,000 pieces of Old Testament evidence, amounting to a total of 66,000 pieces of biblical manuscript evidence compared to Homer's 1,900. Quiz question number 4. True or false? Despite the volume of biblical manuscripts, we still can't trust them because the length of time between the originals and the copies is just too great. That actually turns out to be false. The New Testament documents were written throughout the end of the 1st century by various New Testament authors following the events of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, and they were completed about the turn of the century. Therefore, that gives us about 70 years during which all of those documents were penned. Now, the earliest New Testament manuscript we have was discovered around AD 130, which leaves us a very small margin of time between original authorship and the earliest manuscript evidence, especially when you compare that to the other works of classical antiquity. For example, Homer's Iliad was originally authored around 800 BC, but the earliest manuscript is dated about 415 BC, leaving a gap of about 400 years. This chart illustrates the same gap for the New Testament documents and several other works of classical antiquity. As you can see, the New Testament documents have the smallest time interval by far. Quiz question number 5. What about the number of variations in the biblical text? Doesn't that disqualify the Bible as a trustworthy document? No, actually. Variants in the text aren't actually problems unless they provoke different readings of the text. Most variants are benign, like these: the transposition of Jesus Christ to Christ Jesus, or variant spellings such as honor, H-O-N-O-R, or honor spelled H-O-N-O-U-R. But when these variants are carried across the sheer volume of New Testament manuscript copies, as we've seen, the numbers of variants add up rather quickly to large sums, though they don't affect the meaning of the text at all. The number of meaningful variants is still extremely small and still manages to lead us to a New Testament document that is 99.9% pure, according to Dr. Mike Licona, a New Testament historical scholar, and I will link you to his video below. So, how did you do? Did you learn something new or encouraging? Well, if you did, comment below so that other people will be encouraged to watch and learn as well. And don't forget to like the video or share it with your friends. Also, you'll find a link to my Biblical Manuscript Reliability download in the description box so you can review what we've covered. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you right here next time. If you'll click the subscribe button, then you and I can continue working together to forge a confident faith for this crazy world.